Whoa, hello. Hey everyone, my name is Dave. Welcome to the NTD Racing Speed Shop. This right behind me is Trooper, and in about 2 months, it'll be a Class 11 racer. We'll be racing at the Mint 400 with it. But I need to raise the rear end a little bit. I got this thing here from Car Tech. It's called the Sway Away Torsion Housing Adjuster. I have no idea how to put this thing in. So I've been scouring the internet, I've been scouring YouTube, and I can't find anyone who's made a video for how to install this thing, and maybe it's out there. You can let me know in the comments. So I'm going to put this thing in there. I will show you what it looks like as I start taking the torsion housing apart, how it applies to the Class 11, how I'm going to put this thing in there. I'll let you know what I learned along the way, and hopefully you might find it useful. If you are doing this yourself, you should find the parts that I'm using for this job in the description below. And with that, let's go ahead and start taking it apart and see what we see. All right, so this is kind of nice because I've already got the engine out, transmission out, so you really get a good look at what we're working with in the back of the VW Bug. And if you look in here, this is the part that we're going to be cutting out for the torsion arm adjuster. Here's one of the problems I see. Here are the mounts for the transmission. I'm not sure if they're different in other bugs, but that's what I've got. So somehow after I make this whole torsion arm thing in there, I've got to reconstruct that transmission mount. But to get started, I think what we're gonna do, we'll probably get rid of the brake lines first and get those off and out of the way. We'll get rid of the drum brake and all the hub there. The half shafts should come out of there nicely. We'll get the trailing arms off. We're gonna be doing a rebuild on those in the next video. And then we'll start getting the spring out of the torsion tube there. And then I'm interested to know what we see inside there. Is it the same size splines that go with the sway away or not? How's this thing gonna go together? It's all a mystery. We're about to find out right now. Okay, so as it turns out, a Home Depot bucket is not up for that task, but maybe a rigid toolbox is. These bolts right here, however, were a lot more difficult to get out than I had expected. It's a 17 millimeter Allen tool, and so that went in there and it came out no problems. I know people replace those. I'm not. I opted just to go and buy the tool kit. The link for this is in the description below. I think it costs like 24 bucks at Amazon, and it gives me all the way up to a 19 millimeter in case I need that somewhere else. So there you go. Time to work on this one. I can't believe it. I forgot to video us flipping this thing over. So basically, with the way it is right now, it just took two of us and we flipped it straight over. It was about 10 feet high, which just cleared my ceiling, and then we put it down on some jack stands over here. Let me show you what we got going next. Now that it's upside down, it's really, I think, kind of almost important that you do put this thing on with it upside down. This is what I got to cut out. And not all bugs are like this, because I showed this to one of my other buddies who race these things also. This is a transmission mount and not the way others look, I guess. So I got to figure out how I'm going to deal with the transmission mount here. But anyway, this is what we're putting in here. And so all I'm going to do is basically center this thing up, scribe the lines on here. I'm going to cut the tube right here. I'm going to cut this tube right here. And then I'm going to cut out enough of this such that I can get this thing basically mounted inside there, but also kind of do some welding in there from this side. I have to flip back over, do it from the other side also. And then the plan will be to box this thing in there. And from what I've been talking to the guys, it doesn't matter how this thing is oriented once it's welded in there, because basically these fingers are in there, and once these bolts push these fingers down, it also, this is upside down, forces the suspension that way and gives you more or less lift based on doing that. But what is important is that these things are oriented enough down such that as rocks come across the body, they don't rip off one of these things or something like that. So it'll probably be oriented something like this, kind of facing down, as opposed to level where maybe these things are vulnerable out there. Let's go ahead and get to cutting this piece out. Well, it's always a little bit scary to hack into something like this, but not that big a deal. Here's the tube. Let me see the parts I got here. Here was the parts of that transmission mount. I might figure out if I can just weld, clean it up and weld that back on there, just because I don't want to make another one. Here's the piece that I cut out. You can see the splines in there. And you know, the reason I'm replacing this is because the guys say you can strip these splines out, and these are a whole lot stronger. So anyway, I just do what I'm told. Anyway, so this piece now fits in here real nice. So what am I going to do now? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean up both edges over here and get ready to weld them. So I'm going to do a combination of welding. I'm going to do some TIG welding where I can, so I'll probably TIG weld these parts. And then on the other side, on the inside, I'll probably do some MIG welding inside there just because I won't be able to get in there and TIG weld. I got to clean back some of this sheet metal. I don't care about sheet metal. I really care about strong welds to maintain at least the integrity of this tube here as much as possible. And then to kind of resist, you know, because this thing's going to want to, every time you hit a bump, it's going to want to do one of these. It's going to want to turn. And so what I'll do is these welds right here, obviously on the tube, will probably resist a lot of that. And then just some insurance, what we'll do is we'll go in here, we're going to box in this with another piece of probably 1/8 inch plate, which I'll cut on the plasma table. And then I'm going to show you how I plan on making this a box to make it, I think, as easy as I possibly can on myself, such that I can get it in there and make it look real pretty without having to do a whole bunch of crazy math or something like that. So let's go ahead and prep this area for some welding, and then we'll cut some parts out on the plasma table. All right, well, we're going to do a little bit of CAD, computer-aided design, and I do this all the time. I do it for guys who are better fabricators than I could ever be, and they just say, I just can't learn CAD, you know, for whatever reason. Well, if you can draw lines, circles, and squares, you can do computer-aided design. It's super easy. So we're going to cut something on the Langmuir Systems Crossfire XR, and to do that, we need to first draw what we're going to cut. So we're just going to cut some really simple pieces. I'm going to go up here, and this is Fusion 360. I'm going to say I'm going to create a sketch. Over here, you see on this little block, it shows the Y is up and the X is to the right. That is the plane in which all plasma cutters cut on, and the Z is usually the torch height control. So I'm going to click on that plane. So now I'm drawing on that sheet of paper, which is the X and Y plane. So first thing I need to do is I need to make just a rectangle that, so I'm going to hit the hotkey R, and when I say hotkey, I'm clicking a key on my keyboard, and it brings up rectangle. So now I can kind of click anywhere, start scribing that thing out one time, and then now once I've started scribing the line, I can just go ahead and punch in the values that I want. So it's going to be 3 1/8 inches wide, 3.125. Let me hit the tab key to go over the other side, and this is going to be 2 inches high. That's going to be one side of this closeout thing I'm going to make for this whole thing. So that is one shape. Now what I'm going to do is, since this is a 2-dimensional shape, I want to make it 3 dimensions, just because when you cut things on a plasma table, it's easier if they're in 3 dimensions. So I'm going to hit what's the hotkey E. I'm going to hit the E on my keyboard, and that's going to go into a mode called extrude, which basically means I'm going to give this thing 3 dimensions. And I'm cutting out of 1/8 inch plate steel. I'm going to say 0.125 again, and that makes it a 3-dimensional part. And if you kind of watch over here where I have origin, sketch, and all those things, I don't have a body yet. I don't have a thing over there yet. But as soon as I hit the enter key, boop, there goes a body. And now this becomes body number 1. If I scroll down, that becomes body 1. I can turn it off or turn it on with the little eyeball here if I wanted to see it, or if I didn't want to see it, or have it interfere with other things that I was making at the time. So I'm good with that. So now I need to make another body. So I'm going to go over to sketch, and now what you'll see is over in sketches, once I click on this plane here, same plane I was on before, it's going to start a sketch number 2. So now I have 2 sketches and 1 body. So you basically work in bodies and sketches most of the time is what I do. So this part is going to be the side plates for this closeout panel. And what I want it to be, I'm just going to start making some lines. I'm going to hit the hotkey L, and when I do, you kind of see over here a line came up. And this thing that I'm going to make is going to be 2 inches in the vertical, and then it's going to be, from there, it's going to go over, what I put, 3 inches. I'm going to have 3 inches here. It's going to go up 1/4 inch, 0.25, and then it's going to basically hotkey L again. I'm going to close that whole thing out. I'm going to click on that and that. And as soon as I click on this, you'll see right now that it's all white. But as soon as I enclose the space, it's going to turn blue. And that tells me that it is enclosed and I can extrude it. So I'm going to hit hotkey E again. I'm going to click on that piece. I'm going to click on it again. And I'm going to click over here just so you kind of see it go 3 dimensions. I'm going to say 0.125. Hello, 0.125. And you can kind of see it has some shape to it. I still have one body until I hit enter, boop, and now I have 2 bodies over there. Since I need 2 of these, one for both sides, I'm going to hit the hotkey M for move. I'm going to click on the body, and it still says body over here. I'm going to say create a copy. And now I'm going to flip the second copy over so I can kind of nest it, and then I'm going to move it. And then now I'll be able to basically cut both of those pieces. Now I've got 3 bodies. I just need to make one more, and that's going to be basically the big piece, which kind of allows me to double up and, you know, close out this whole panel here. So the whole plate is going to be, I'm going to first go to sketch it. I want to sketch on that same plane there, and it's going to be, I'm going to hit the hotkey R again, and that's going to be width. It's going to be 5.5 inches. I'm going to hit the tab key. Length is going to be 7.5 inches. All right, I'm going to hit enter on that. It turned it blue because it's all enclosed. I could extrude that if I wanted to. And then in the center, it is going to be, or I'm going to cut out a piece that's going to be 6 inches tall and 3 1/8 inch wide. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to go hotkey L. Let's see if this works. I'm going to actually hit the X key. And the X key is going to turn this in from making a normal line to what's called a construction line. You'll kind of see over here on the right, when I hit the X, it's going to go to line type. I'm going to go X, and it's going to go to construction line. And what that's going to do is going to allow me to draw a line that will not cut. If it's a solid line, it's going to create a tool path. And if it's a dashed line like this, then it won't create a tool path. So I'm going to show you one more thing here. Hit hotkey L again and bring the line up. As I kind of bring this cursor over to this line in the center, I kind of get that little triangle there. And that's telling me that if I click right now, it's going to grab the midpoint of that line. That's basically what I wanted to do. I just wanted that for a reference. And then now I'm going to draw another line. This time I'm going to turn construction lines off. This one is going to be 3.125 inches. I'm going to hit enter, and then I'm going to grab this construction line, this midpoint here. I'm going to select that line. Nope, not that line. I'm going to select midpoint. I want this line, and I want the midpoint to be right over there. And now you can kind of see I was able to force that to center itself on that point, since I had that point right there. And then now I'm going to just basically close this thing out. I'm going to hit hotkey L again for a line. I'm going to go up 6 inches. And then hotkey L again. I'm going to go from here, and you can kind of see as I bring my cursor to it, it makes a box as it snaps over that line. Now it's saying it's coincident with that point. 6 inches, and then hotkey L again, and this should be 3.125 inches. There we go. Now I'm going to go and take my scissors. I'm going to cut this line off down here at the bottom because I don't want that. I want that to be an open space. That looks like the shape I want for the most part. I might just soften these edges up here at the ends. I'm going to make them some fillets. Make the same one over on this side. And that looks like my closeout panel I'm going to make. So now I'm going to hit hotkey. Oh, I got to enter to finish up those fillets. I'm going to hit hotkey E to extrude this. I'm going to select this part. Did I select the part? Did I get the right thing? Let's see here. All right, select it. There we go. Now we got 1.125. And when I hit enter, boop, there's a 4th body. Now I got 4 bodies. Now it's time to cut this thing out and manufacture it. But something I can do that you can't necessarily, I think, do if you're fabricating otherwise is I can nest things inside here. So I can try to make it to where I waste as little material as I possibly can. I'm going to say, I'm going to move this thing, and let's take this one first. Let's rotate it this way. And then let's stick it right in here. And that way it'll cut that piece. And then we'll hit enter, and then we'll move these other pieces. This, and we'll hit the shift key. Actually, I'll grab them both. We'll turn them both this way. And we'll move them right there. How about like that? Say enter, hotkey M again. We'll grab this one. And I think just move right over here. And that way I think I waste the least amount of material. In general, you know, when I go to cut something on a plasma table, if I can get about a 1/4 inch between the pieces, that's going to be enough for it. I'm going to say enter. And in fact, the way I kind of cut my material, I think I just want to turn the whole thing. So I'm going to hit hotkey M again. And I actually wanted to cut in this orientation. So I'm going to turn it 90 degrees. There we go. And there, now it's going to go into my machine like this. So now we're going to go from, you know, this looks a little tight right here. Looks a little close. One more time. One more time. Right there. Let's move it right there in between those two. Cool. There, that looks good. All right, so now we're ready to go from computer-aided design over to manufacturing, or CAM, computer-aided manufacturing. We've gone to a whole nother part of the Fusion 360 software, which allows us to make the G code to put this into the Langmuir Systems fire control so that it can cut this thing out. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to setup, and I'm going to say this is going to be my box point. This is going to be like the point where the program basically bases itself off of. And I always pick the top left because I go through my steel like I read my books, top left to bottom right. Let me see. It'll pick all those parts. I'm going to say close out. All right. I'm going to say okay on that. It's good. Not going to like that, but I wanted to continue anyway. It wanted me to pick each of those points, just not necessary. I'm going to go to cutting, and I'm going to select the tool that we're going to use, which I've been using a razor weld for 4 years now. I've been using the razor weld. It is awesome. I'm not going with a hypertherm for my plasma table. I do have a hypertherm on my Dragon A250 from Bentech. Just I don't use it on this. There's my razor weld 45. And since I'm cutting 1/8 inch plate, I'm going to cut that at 100 inches per second. I'm going to go ahead and pick all the parts that I'm going to cut. And then, let me see, we can go ahead and select our entry and all that to try to minimize the, let me see, the kind of the marks you get. I say usually about 0.05. I enter and exit at 90 degrees. And I'm going to say, let's say 0.25 is going to be pretty good. And how about we go and we start here in this corner. We'll just start down here, about right there. I got to get a corner that's not going to overlap with something else. I've got all those things picked. And now it's going to generate the G code. This is what the pattern is going to look like. So I can see it's going to enter there. And it's going to cut all those parts. This one right here could be problematic. It's getting kind of close to that piece. So what I can do is I can go over to cutting again, and I can just select all these things. And sometimes I'll just let it pick its own tool path and see if it does better than my initial decision. See, I don't like this. If you kind of zoom in here, you can kind of see this thing's going to fire the torch too close to this piece. And I think that it could put a nick in that piece. So I'm going to go in there and I'm going to tell it, no, that's not where I want you to fire the torch. I'm going to go and tell it to cut again. Again, you got to pick the pieces again. Go over here to the end, and I'm going to say I wanted to go there, and how about we go like right here and right over there. And then now we can tell it where we want it to enter and start all those cuts. And then now you see none of those will overlap. So that looks pretty good. We're going to go over to post the G code. I use a 0.202, I'm sorry, 0.3 spring, that's fine. A 0.2 second delay. And then I'm just going to pick the folder I'm going to put this into. All right, I'll pick that folder. I'm going to call it the rear suspension for Trooper. And there we go. I'm going to post it. And now it is ready to go over to fire control and cut this thing out on the Langmuir Systems Crossfire XR. We are officially at the point where I'm making up all the steps. You can kind of see what I did with this piece, the adjuster. It's going to sit in there like this. This is where it's going to be boxed in. I just kind of pre-welded those pieces on there. So now the challenge is, how do I get this thing lined up inside here? And I think just using the springs as alignment tools is going to be the way to go. Here's the thing is, once those things go in, I don't think they're going to come out because they are so tight on the splines of these adjusters. So I think they go in one time, at least they are going to for me. So I'm going to put a little bit of grease on the splines. Again, it just feels like a good idea. I don't know. There's no nothing telling me to do that. Other than, you know, I think it'll kind of keep down, like, let's say any kind of corrosion in there, if there's some grease in there. Maybe they'll come apart later on. I kind of doubt it. They're really tight in there. And I'll also put just a little bit of grease on the inside of the adjuster piece. Maybe I'll let it slide in there just a little bit easier. I doubt that too. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to kind of pre-assemble this thing. I'm going to put this in upside down. Realize I'm going to flip it around once it's in, but I'm going to put this thing in there kind of upside down just to line everything up. I'm going to slide this shaft in to the housing all the way through, and then I'm going to take a mallet and I'm going to start tapping that shaft into the adjuster. And once it's there, I'll be able to flip that thing over. Once I have both of them in, I should be able to flip this thing over, align it, and then start welding it into place. Let's see where we're at with this program here. We've got the housing in there. It took some beating. I tell you what, to get those shafts in, I put these over the ends there just to kind of center everything, but to get those shafts far enough into the little adjusters in there, it took a beating. But they're in there. And so that thing's pretty much centered up. This is where I'm gonna TIG weld it as much as I can around the tubes here. And then once that's TIG welded in, I'll still have some MIG welding to do from the back side. I'll start shaping this piece to get that thing in there to kind of close that whole thing out and make it look as good as it needs to look on the underside of a 1973 VW Bug. Let's get to some welding. I got this thing burned in. You can kind of see, I hate MIG welding. You can see where I ran out of talent in some spots, but I think this is going to hold on there pretty good, so I'm not worried about that. And it's the bottom side of the vehicle, so a little bit of spray paint, I'll look like a pro. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to work on figuring out how this transmission mount is going to go in here. I'm going to get the transmission, I'm going to mount it up to this thing, figure out how it will interface with that mount. I understand that my mount is a little different than other people's, so what I'll do is I'm just going to do it, and then I'll show you what it looks like when I'm all done. All right, nobody make fun of my janky transmission. I know it looks messy, but it works, and if it works, it works. We'll clean it up. It'll look pretty. Anyway, here's what I came up with. The transmission mount, it had some other mount. It was completely coming apart. I'd have to put 2 bolts here. It just wasn't really going to work. So what I did, this went over the plasma cutter. I made this plate. This is 3/16, probably totally overkill. It bolts through there in 3 places. And so then I got these 2 bolt holes right here. And what I did is I made this piece. Well, first I'll have these pads. I think these are like for shackles or something like that. They're super durable rubber. Those will sit right in there between, hopefully to take a little bit of vibration out before aluminum starts to crack. And then this plate will just sit right on there on top, going in there one-handed. Those holes do line up. And so what I'm going to do is it'll weld across there. It's going to weld across here, and it's going to weld across there. And then whenever I take the transmission in and out, it's just got 2 bolts, which will make it pretty easy, and the weight will sit on there, kind of making, you know, maintenance easy. I don't know if this is legal in the Class 11 world. We'll probably run it. And if somebody says something, we'll change it. But right now, this is like the best solution that I could come up with. Anyway, I'm going to burn this in, and this project's pretty much done. All right, this might be hard to believe, but this thing will be a race car in 2 months. So we've got a whole bunch of content coming up for that. Like I said, I'm doing the trailing arms. What'll be really cool is I'm using Bentech. I'm doing the whole design for the roll cage for this thing, and I'm showing you how you could do it yourself, and then I'll be cutting parts out on the Dragon A250, welding it together with Harbor Freight's ProTig 205, a lot of cool stuff. And if you like that kind of content, hopefully you will consider subscribing. And even more important, if you don't hit that notification bell, you may never see another one of my videos. This is the way YouTube works. So all I'll ask you is turn on the notifications and you'll catch the next episode. But if you're looking for something to watch right now, I'll put the playlist for this build right here. Anyways, hope to see you next week. Take care of yourself.